Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel, Fun with Science. I am Shagun Sharma, and today we'll be talking about the chapter. I'm just going to share the screen. Just give me a minute. Yeah. So, yeah. So I hope everyone can see this. So today we are going to work on the chapter Nutrition in Animals, and this chapter I've taken from class 10th. The chapter name is Life Processes, and we are only going to work on the aspect nutrition in animals. Okay. So let's start. So what do you know about nutrition? When you use the word nutrition, क्या आता है आपके दिमाग में? खाना कैसे खाते हैं? खाना कैसे डाइजेस्ट होता है? खाना किस तरह का होता है? There are so many words which are related to nutrition, right? So when we talk about nutrition, that the process of how you intake the food, how it goes inside your stomach and it gets digested and absorbed in the body is known as nutrition. एज वी ऑल नो न्यूट्रिशन प्लांट्स में भी होता है और न्यूट्रिशन एनिमल्स में भी होता है राइट सो बेसिकली न्यूट्रिशन इज ऑफ टू टाइप्स राइट one is autotrophic nutrition and the other one is your heterotrophic nutrition. So autotrophic nutrition जैसे आप देख सकते हैं auto word means self, trophos mean feed. So any organisms which are capable of making their own food, either using light energy or chemical energy, they are known as autotrophs. And the organisms which obtain or eat food made by the autotrophs are known as heterotrophs. So for example, our plants or certain algae, they are capable of making their own food using light and energy. So that process we all know is known as photosynthesis. So I don't need to go back into that details. Um, Again, so we are not going to focus on the autotrophic part. I am not going to talk about nutrition in plants in this video. In this video, we'll be discussing about heterotrophic mode of nutrition, or हम कैसे खाना खाते हैं, because humans, we are the biggest example of heterotrophs. And we can see other animals like your lion, your hare, deer, ये सारे के सारे घास खाते हैं. All of them eat grass. So they are other heterotrophs are further classified into three types, right? So one is your holozoic nutrition, right? The other one is your saprotrophic mode of nutrition, and the third one is your parasitic nutrition. So what we humans belong to is holozoic nutrition, in which case the organism feeds on ingesting solid organic matter, which is then digested and absorbed into their bodies. So all animals and humans follow the holozoic mode of nutrition. You must have seen all these things on your geographic channel on humans, and I think by this time this should be your basic knowledge, right? So this is the most common type of nutrition, which is classified under heterotrophic nutrition. अब इसके बाद हमारे पास आता है saprotrophic mode of nutrition. So what are saprophytes, sorry. They feed on dead and decaying matter. जैसे कि आपका फंजाई होता है, जो भी चीज सड़ रही होती है, गल रही होती है, anything that is decaying, you find these very small minuscule organisms which are feeding on that matter, and as a result of their feeding, that whole organic compound decomposes into nothing after certain days. For example, if you find any dead animal or any dead insect or anything that is lying across in your garden, after a few days, if you don't touch it, after a few days you'll just slowly see it decomposing. The skin will go, and then finally you can just see the bones, and eventually the bones will also mix up with the soil. So that process, how does it happen? It does not happen on its own. अपने आप नहीं वो हवा 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 होती है और वो it goes back into the earth. No, it's not that. These organisms, they are responsible for the decaying and decomposition of matter. If not for them, we would have a large number of organisms lying around just like that. Even when you decompose, when you bury a human body also, it also decomposes after certain point of time as a result of these saprophytes, right? So mainly bacteria and fungi are included in this category. Third, we have the parasites, which are actually very clever human beings. They don't want to do work on their own, so they borrow work from the other person around them. So I know there are students also who like to do the same. So basically, I do not wish to say that, but yeah, you students are acting as parasites, stealing other one's homework. So yeah, so these parasites are organisms which obtain nutrients from living organisms. They survive and absorb on the host body. For example, you have lice, which all the kids when they are small, they have lice in their head. They just keep scratching their head till their like skin comes out. So that is because of these organisms. They feed into the human scalp. They keep biting that area and causing rashes and injuries over there, and they keep feeding on it. So they can't make food on their own, they can't cook on their own, so therefore they require a host to survive. So these parasites, they cannot survive on their own without a host, right? Tapeworms, you have seen a lot of kids and lot of adults have tapeworms living in their stomach. They either come through water, contaminated water, and they end up living in your intestines, where they keep feeding your food which is supposed to be absorbed by your body, but it does not get there, and it goes into their stomach. So these are short of how many types of heterotrophic nutrition they are. So let's delve into our main mode of nutrition, that is your holozoic nutrition. So first of all, I need to ask you, do you think all the nutrition process, मतलब हर organism में nutrition same तरीके से ही होता होगा? We have a stomach, so does amoeba have a stomach? So does your fungi have a stomach? So we need to first analyze this process, that all the organisms are structurally different. When we talk about hierarchy, you know that five kingdom classification of your organisms. So for a reason there is a classification of organisms, because all the organisms are different and they have a different mode of feeding, right? So let's start with a very basic organism, which is your single celled unicellular amoeba. So since it is unicellular, therefore it does not have many organisms, or very many, sorry, not organisms, many organelles to work with, right? उसके अंदर का सिस्टम बहुत सिंपल है. जो खाया, एक तरफ से खाया, एक तरफ से निकाला. If I have to talk in very simple layman terms, that is how this process works. It does not have a mouth which will chew its food, then it does not have another stomach which will grind its food. So yeah, for amoeba, this process is very simple. Most of the process occurs with the help of actually diffusion, because these amoeba do not eat very heavy particles, like they are not eating a lion, they are not eating a dog. They're just eating some random very microscopic small particles which are roaming around them, right? So basically bacteria, what they ingest is bacteria. So as you can see from the diagram, this whole process of them ingesting the food and then digesting the food is known as phagocytosis. Just a minute. Yes. So, as you can see, this process is phagocytosis. So, let's start with this process. As you can see, this is your uh, amoeba, right? I am not going to be very good at writing this, but I will try to write. So, yeah. So, this is your amoeba, number one. The image starts in this way, right? So, as you can see, it can see its food. This is the food it's supposed to eat. So, this is the bacterium, right? So, the structure of amoeba basically has arms like structure, which are known as pseudopods or pseudopodiae. Many multiple is known as pseudopodiae. So what it does is it actually flails these arms. It forms this structure into the form of arms. And as you can see in this diagram, you can see, right? You can see this part. This whole arm formation has happened. And the food gets trapped within these arms, right? Since it is unicellular, there are no hard structures. So this process, this thing results in the formation of a phagosome. After this process, in the sorry fourth step, I have not labeled the third one. In the fourth step, as you can see, this food vacuole of phagosome is formed. So the food particle gets entrapped within the body of amoeba, and it is then acted upon by organelle like lysosome. See, the lysosome plus this food phagosome which is formed is known as phagolysosome. As you all know, lysosomes are known as suicidal bags as they contain enzymes which help in digesting. So whatever food is ingested is digested in this particular phagolysosome. So that is your step number 5. After the digestion occurs, whatever leftover material which is supposed to be taken out is ingested out of the body through the same process, through the rearranging of the pseudopodia. The ingestion process takes place. So, right, this is very basic as far as your this thing is concerned, amoeba is concerned, right? So, let's jump up a little higher. The next organism we will be talking about is, just a minute. Yeah. So the next organism we'll be talking about is your, okay, so these things are supposed to, oh, clear all drawings. Yeah. Okay. So our next one, new one is a paramecium. It is a um bit higher. I won't say it is also unicellular, it's not a multicellular organism. But in this case, in case of a paramecium, there is a particular spot. As in case of amoeba, there at any point, if the bacteria is in front of the amoeba, at the back of the amoeba, it is all the same. It is just going to engulf its arms and entrap that molecule. But in case of paramecium, there is a fixed spot from where the food is supposed to enter. As you can see this, the food particle. So this is the spot from where the food will enter, right? So same process, and you can see it also has these pseudopods, these imaginary arms it has. So the food enters from this point, and this thing, the whole thing, the food and the body of the pseudo paramecium adjusts itself in such a way that the food particle will enter through this area only. After that, the food vacuole is formed, right? You can see step number 2. This is the step number 2. So the food particle is formed. After that, you have the lysosome, which contains the digestive enzymes. That same phagolysosome gets formed over here. The food is digested. In this step, you can see the food is digested. And then finally, the unwanted material is adjusted out. Exocytic vehicle containing undigested material is made, and the material is taken out of the body. Right? So this is how digestion occurs in case of parameciums. Next, we will talk about, now let's go to a higher phase. So our higher phase is the journey of a cheeseburger. I'm very sure that you all know that nobody else eats cheeseburgers besides us, or besides our very cute dogs, which we feed definitely. But yeah, so let us come to the main topic, that is nutrition in human beings. So, as you can see from this diagram, so what happens, this whole question will be answered in this thing. What happens when you eat a cheeseburger? On case of other people, it can be fried chicken and fries, and I can name many other interesting foods which are going to make your mouth salivate, and eventually you're going to digress from studying. So, sorry, coming back to the topic. So, as you can see, what happens in case of humans? So you can see this very cute and pretty little diagram. So just a minute. So yeah, you can see the stomach. So as soon as you start eating the food, the first process is the food is churned into smaller bits, right? You can't, I mean, take out the whole cheeseburger the same way it comes in, right? So the first step that happens is in the stomach. I'm just going as a summary. The food is churned there into smaller pieces. Then from there, the stomach, the food goes into the small intestine, where it is mixed with other intestinal juices to further digest the food, right? After that, from the small intestine, a lot of absorption takes place. So the absorption causes the food and the required materials to be transported to the blood towards other part of the body, right? Also in small intestine, we have secretions coming from the liver, like the bile. which allows the environment to become alkaline, right? After that, whatever absorption can happen occurs over there. In case of liver, what liver does is it removes out unwanted substances from the blood. After that, the rest leftover food is moved towards the large intestine where more water is absorbed, because all of the nutritional elements are absorbed into the small intestine area. In the large intestine area, only the water portion gets absorbed. After that, finally, you all know what happens when we go into that pretty little bathroom of ours. So that is the final form where the undigested food is ingested out of the body through the anus. So this is just a small summary of the whole thing. So let's move on to the whole process as to how it occurs. Just a minute. Okay. So, the first part that should come into your mind is the food enters through the mouth. So, what other parts are present inside our mouth? We have the teeth, we have the tongue, we have other glands which are present inside the mouth. So, I will start with the teeth. What is the function of the teeth? The teeth helps in us in chewing the food into smaller bits and pieces, right? Also, there is a reason why you start to salivate when you look at food or when you think about food, because the mind is telling the body that it needs to start the process of digestion since the food is going to come in. So for the breaking down of the food into the smaller pieces, we actually need saliva to mix and wet the food so that it becomes easier for it to move down the road, right? So also the saliva, as you can see in this diagram, I've shown over here, you can see there are a lot of salivary glands present all around the mouth, right? So there's your submandibular salivary gland, your parotid salivary gland. So you have salivary glands in your mouth which release saliva, right? So the saliva contains enzymes like salivary amylase. Okay. Number one question: what are enzymes? So enzymes are certain complex biological molecules which help in speeding up of a particular reaction. So if you have to break down, for example, if I tell one of your students to go and break down that particular piece of stone, so you are going to take like 1 hour. If I send like three students along with you, you are only going to take like 15 minutes to break that entire stone into pieces. So these enzymes work in the same way. These enzymes speed up the process of digesting food. So every enzyme works on a different kind of biomolecule. This enzyme amylase is known to work on carbohydrates. So therefore it breaks down starch into sugar. Whatever digestion happens is breaking down of large biomolecules. You all know which large biomolecules I am talking about. You have your carbohydrates, you have your proteins, you have your fats and lipids, right? So carbohydrates get broken into smaller particles like sugar molecules. Your proteins get broken into amino acids. Your lipids get broken into fatty acids. So here your starch is broken down into sugar by the action of salivary amylase, right? Okay. What happens next? Okay, this khichdi humne is done in the mouth. The mouth is known for this part. Now from the mouth, as you all know, when it reaches the throat, you have your esophagus, right? At this base, okay, when the food reaches the esophagus, there are two pipes. There's a doorway. ये वाला रास्ता लेना चाहेंगे या ये वाला रास्ता लेना चाहेंगे? That question is asked by towards the food, right? So the food needs to know that it needs to go down the food pipe and not the windpipe. So there is a doorway which closes, which opens half. Only that half opens, that leads to the food pipe, and the other half which leads to the windpipe is closed. So that is one very clever mechanism or a sphincter process through which the food enters the food pipe and thus the esophagus. Right? So as you can see from this diagram, the food moves from the esophagus towards the stomach. But my question is how? I mean, are there people pushing the food? Okay, chalo, jao, 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 niche jao, niche jao, niche jao, niche jana hai. So I don't think so. That is not the process how it works. So obviously the brain is controlling this peristaltic movement. These movements through which food moves down the food canal and esophagus is known as peristalsis or peristaltic movement. So these are actually simultaneously contraction and relaxation of these muscles. which allow the food particles to go down. As you can see in this diagram which I've shown before, right? These diagrams you can see the contraction process is happening. Bolus is the food that the food after it gets chewed and masticated and mixed with saliva, and when it comes down the food pipe, that form of food is known as bolus, right? So the bolus, when it comes down the whole thing, right, when it is coming down the food pipe, it is moved as a result of simultaneous contraction and relaxation of these muscles. So when this thing contracts, the food gets pushed down, as you can see. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. Just a second. Just a second. Just a second. Yeah. So, as you can see, when this whole thing contracts, the food particle will start moving downwards, and the muscle towards the downside will relax, which will allow the food particle to move further. So, this contraction, relaxation allow the food to be moving and will eventually end up in the stomach. Right? Okay. So, now the question happens, what happens in the stomach? Just a minute. Okay. So, stomach is where, okay, stomach is actually made up of three parts. You have fundus, pylorus, and your this duodenum, the central region, which we say as. Uh, so, your fundus is the starting part, and the pylorus is your ending part. So, the food enters from the fundus part of the stomach, and in the stomach the food is mixed properly with the help of digestive juices. The stomach is full of gastric glands which secrete different kind of hormones and liquids, right? So you have your mucous neck cells which help in secreting mucus. As you can see, the lining of the stomach is mostly filled with mucus, and I will tell you why. There is another set of cells which are known as peptic or chief cells, which secrete the proenzyme pepsinogen, which when cleaved results in the formation of pepsin. So these pepsinogen or your proenzyme are those enzymes which are in the inactive state. When they come under the right pH conditions, they get activated. So for pepsinogen to work, the environment required is acidic. So we have parietal cells or oxygenetic cells which secrete HCl and intrinsic factors which convert the pepsinogen into pepsin. So the function of pepsin is to break down proteins into peptides or smaller amino acids. So these three major events occur inside your stomach. So when food is all this process happens, the HCl is secreted, the pepsin gets activated. So the food then starts moving towards the next part of the alimentary canal, that is your small intestine. So the food that will come from there, from this your stomach, is going to be acidic in nature. So the small intestine is that place where your absorption occurs, where the actual absorption of food occurs. Okay. The small intestine, you have the small intestine and the large intestine. The small intestine is divided into three parts. You have your duodenum, which is the starting part. Then you have the middle part, which is known as jejunum, and the final small part is known as ileum. Okay. So your small intestine is technically the longest organ because it is like coiled up into a very small compact space. So when we look at it, it looks as small intestine, but it is not small intestine. It is actually long intestine. And your large intestine is not very long, but it is more large in width as compared to your small intestine. Please remember that it's a very simple question which will further come in your MCQs also. So you should know that. Okay, the size of your small intestine will depend on what kind of animal it is inside, right? So your herbivores which are capable of eating only grass, so your grass contains cellulose. I hope everyone knows that. So cellulose is a very hard enzyme to digest and hard biomolecule to digest. It's a carbohydrate. And you know, we humans cannot eat grass. Is the reason because we do not have the enzyme which is capable of digesting cellulose. But even though animals like cows and goat have these enzymes, it still takes a longer process to digest compounds like grass. So herbivores tend to have a longer small intestine as compared to carnivores or any other meating animals, because meat gets digested very easily. Okay, so what else happens in your small intestine? So your small intestine also receives secretions from your liver and pancreas. You all know pancreas release insulin, glucagon, and somatostatin, and your liver is capable of releasing bile, which is stored in a small organ which is known as gallbladder. So the function of bile is actually two things. The bile acts on your lipids and breaks them down into fat globules, not the very minuscule fatty acids, but into fat globules, right? And also the bile creates a very alkaline environment for the pancreatic enzymes to work, because these insulin and glucagon, they cannot work in an acidic environment. They will work in a alkaline environment, right? Besides these the enzymes which are present in the small intestine and work are trypsin and lipase. So trypsin also works on your proteins and breaks down into amino acids, and your lipase breaks down these fat globules into fatty acids. So your chymotrypsinogen is your trypsinogen is your inactive enzyme, and when cleaved it becomes trypsin, right? Also, one more thing, sorry, I'll be going back. When I pointed out this fact that the mucus is released by the in the stomach, the reason for that is, since the environment inside the stomach is acidic, if there is no mucus lining, that acid besides the food will also damage the lining of the stomach. So the mucus works in a protective way to help the stomach perform its function accurately, right? So coming back to small intestine. So as I told you, I'll just point out, you can see your small intestine and it is divided into three parts. You have your, I don't think, just a minute. Yeah. So this is your duodenum. From here it starts. This is your duodenum. Then this part is your jejunum. You can see. I'll just highlight. Spotlight and highlight. Yeah. So this is your jejunum, and this part is your ileum, right? And your large intestine is divided into your ascending colon, your descending colon. The last part is known as sigmoid colon, and then we have the rectum and the anus. You can see the small part which is attached to the ascending colon. This is known as the appendix, and this is a vestigial organ. It used to be there in our ancestors, but actually it does not perform any function. Okay. So as we talked about, all the food is absorbed in case of your small intestine, right? So also, why, since the maximum absorption occurs in small intestine is as a result of villi which are present in the cells of small intestine. The function of the villi is to increase the surface area of the absorption. All these villi are made up of very small cells, and these are full of blood vessels. So the exchange occurs very easily between the food particles and the blood. The components which are absorbed go into the blood, right? So you can see this capillary network also over here. You can see the capillary network that occurs in these villi, and this is a small diagram. You can see these tiny finger like projections occurring throughout the thing. These are microvilli. On each villi you have these further tiny projections which are known as microvilli, right? So what the function is, they basically absorb all the important nutrients which are required by the body. Okay, so the undigested food, when the whole absorption takes place, after that the food moves into the large intestine. So the large intestine is a place where more absorption takes place, but that is only related to your water. There is no absorption of nutrients over there, only water gets absorbed over there. So the undigested material or the fecal matter moves down the descending colon and goes towards the rectum, and then is exited towards the anus or the anal sphincter, right? So this is how this whole process works. This is how your cheeseburger, this is how your cheeseburger ends. As you can see, this is how your cheeseburger ends. So anything you eat goes through this complex process. We never realize it, and we are capable of ingesting so much junk food inside our body. So for them, for these organs to work so hard, if you eat, there's a lot of cases you have heard these days that if you eat a lot of fatty food, you have fatty liver. So that is because your liver starts cannot work and function properly to digest all that fat which is eaten by you, and that fat start accumulating in your body, thus turning your body into an obese individual. So I think since our body is working so hard for everything to go perfect, we should also help it out by eating healthy. And not, I'm not recommending, because I myself am not a very healthy eater. I eat junk, a lot of junk. But I do know that when my body is telling me to stop, so please eat healthy food. And I hope you guys had a good time studying this topic, and you had fun. And I had actually fun teaching, because I'm doing this after a long time. So please subscribe my channel, Fun with Science. And please like, share, and subscribe as much as you can. If you have any views or comments, please mention in the comment section. And if you want me to subscribe or upload any particular topic, please let me know. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.